Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Meyers. We are here for another interview with Oxfordians, and this one is with the most famous bartender in Elizabethan history, Jonathan David Dixon, who is the bartender in our new series called the Blue Boar Tavern. That's for members only, so if you want to see Jonathan in action, and perhaps get a virtual drink, you need to sign up and become a member. Which I thought, wait, I have a cup. So here's to you.
You can even clink them, clink.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm blown away by the things you've accomplished. You are an actor, composer, writer, illustrator. It's all very impressive.
I've been called a shallow hole person, but I say they move just as much earth as a deep digging person.
When I talk about myself that way, and I sort of say, clear sign I can't keep a job.
Yeah.
But you obviously can keep and get many jobs. Tell me to begin with how you found out about Oxford or the Shakespeare controversy, and how you developed that.
Okay, well, I guess probably like a lot of people of my generation, I first saw the PBS special back in, I don't even know what year that was. Frontline, was it?
Yep.
So I saw it, but I was, I didn't know anything. So I was basically still under the illusion there was a lot of information backing up the traditional side. So I was like, well, the first folio says blah, blah, blah. So it must be the guy. But then a bit later, I even have it right here. In 1991, I read this article in the Atlantic Monthly.
Yep.
And that's when the cracks started forming. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, looks like there's something to this. So that led me to reading Charlton Ogburn's book, which is one of the few books that has actually kept me up all night, because I literally couldn't put it down. I was so sleep deprived for a period there. But that's pretty much what turned it. And not long after that, I actually was down south, and I realized I was near Beaufort, South Carolina. I called Charlton Ogburn out of the blue. Actually, I was there to deliver some illustrations for a book I did for The Hunting of the Snark, Lewis Carroll's book.
Mm-hmm.
No, it had just come out, actually. I was there for a conference. But anyway, I called Charlton Ogburn out of the blue and said, I love your book. Could I maybe stop by or say hi? And he was so nice. He and his wife, Vera, had me come on over. He was pretty sick at the time. And he said, I might not be up to it tomorrow, or I might be. But they picked me up at a local nearby place and drove me to their house. And I spent an afternoon with them, and they were so nice. And I gave him a copy of my book because he was a fan of Lewis Carroll too. And he's the one who told me about, it was at the time, the Shakespeare Oxford Society. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know there were other people out there beyond him and me, I guess, who knew about this. So at the time I became a member then, probably in the early 90s, when the newsletter was still like Xeroxed off or something like that.
Mimeo, it was Mimeo.
Yeah, that's what it was. And we wrote back and forth or sent cards for a little while until his death, I guess.
He was really a fascinating guy, and really for sort of this, for the 50s and 60s, he was the guy who came up with a lot of original ideas, many of which I'm still struggling to understand. I think he was followed only in the general, in the realm of general writing by Mark Anderson.
Right.
Who also, like you, traveled south, called him up. I guess there were phone books in those days. I don't know. And
that's how I did it, I guess. Yeah.
And he again was very charming. So I want to go back to the actor, composer, writer, illustrator. We can be here until midnight, and then we'll go to the bartending part. You're on television. You're on the stage. I watched every episode twice, literally, of Longmire,
Mm-hmm.
and know your role in that. Can you talk about that for just a second?
Oh, well, the acting in general, I started off, it's something I did myself to just stay sane while I was doing other work. And then I got into the TV and films here in Santa Fe,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot is being done. So Longmire was my first TV episode. I played one of the red herring suspects, which, you know, on Longmire, everyone's a red herring suspect. And then I had my couple days on that. And Robert Taylor was really nice to all you fans out there. He was great. Yeah, so he made it really comfortable. So I've done a number of films and TV shows through an agent here. I always say I'm a professional actor because I have a card to prove it and pay taxes on it. I also say I'm a professional actor in the sense that, like many of them, much of the time I'm not doing it because it so much depends on people letting you do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And and then with COVID, that sort of killed everything for the last couple of years.
What about the composing? I read in your work that you're a composer of, is it, I'm not quite sure how to phrase it. They're both animated short subjects and opera or operetta, but.
Well, you know, again, this is a fluke. I always say that I'm adequate at doing a lot of things to varying degrees of adequacy, or really, I say my real talent is making it look like I'm good at things when I'm really not. So this one, you know, I've always done music and played various instruments.
Yeah.
So I got in with this CalArts student, an animation student. Just through Facebook we met, and he's brilliant, Ben Wiki. And his graduate thesis project was doing animated short of the House of the Seven Gables.
Mm-hmm.
I always love film music. So, you know, just in chatting to him, I said, well, I have this tune here, sort of a harpsichord sounding one. I had read the book recently, and you can use it in your film if you want. And then he heard it and said, could you write all the music for it?
Wow.
Like, oh, well, I love film music and I've always wanted to try. So I did, and played it all myself because there was no budget and I'm not that great at writing out music. But it's won several awards, and I'm working on something with Ben Wiki now. He's moved on from graduation and is a professional in the animation industry. And we're working on something. Yeah, I write my own pop songs too, or
you perform them?
You know, I'm not that great a performer just because I don't get much chance. But yeah, on the recordings, thanks to lots of editing and cutting out the 90% that I play badly and keeping the 5% I play accidentally well. Yeah, I play all the instruments on my recordings. You can see it on YouTube. Cool. Cool. Actually, on YouTube, you can hear the music for the House of the Seven Gables, and you can hear my pop album called Otherwhere. Just look up Jonathan David Dixon.
Okay, we'll do that. Operas, you're working with Daniel Stephen Crafts on some opera. Is it Operas from the Crypt?
This was bizarre. Here's how I got to know Danny Crafts. He's a real orchestral composer in a way that I can't, it's beyond me. He was giving a class on the authorship question at the University of New Mexico. So I just went down to see what it was like and to see what other people were showing up for it. And he was really good. In fact, he's been on the Don't Quill the Messenger podcast. So we hit it off, and I then found out he's a composer. And we thought, oh, we've got to do something together. So a couple of short plays I gave him and said, could you adapt these to an opera? Because he has as he mentioned on that podcast, his own company called the Gonzo Opera Company, right, which is a real Italian term, gonzo. I didn't know that. And it's like real serious classical music, but sort of wacky, silly themes, because he likes to take all this snootiness out of opera. So we thought, what can we do? And so he mentioned in one conversation he loves Halloween. So I said, have there ever been any scary operas? And he said, well, there's the Turn of the Screw. There's a Victorian Dracula opera, which I didn't know, but he said it's only memorable because it's a Victorian Dracula opera. So then I thought, God, wouldn't it be cool to do them based on like those old EC comics from the 50s, with a host who tells all these puns and these lurid things that I sent him samples. He couldn't believe they were selling these to kids in the 50s. So,
there's a lot of those they sold to kids in the 50s.
Or no, but I love them. So we've done 2 of them so far, and so hopefully they'll be produced. There's a company in, I think maybe Illinois right now that's interested in doing them. So all I've heard is his synthesizer mock-ups of they're small scale, maybe 5 or 6 instruments, 3 characters each. But God, it sounds good. So I can't wait to hear real singers and real instruments doing that.
Look it up and check it out. All right, let's come into the modern Elizabethan era. Mm-hmm. And you are the bartender at the Blue Boar Tavern. And you are surrounded by various Oxfordians using their real names. And we are promised the possibility of some famous guests dropping by. Though that we've only had 1 episode of that series, and we've had well-known Oxfordians who are pretty smart come by. How do you see your role on that as someone to keep the information flowing, serve drinks, serve them more pretzels of the salt, encourage them? I mean, how do you approach that?
I think of myself as, frankly, the resident dork, because when I saw all the other people who were going to be on I got this call out of the blue from Ben August, who I didn't know at that point, asking if I would be a part of this. And he said, and the other people are Bonner and Richard and Hank and Earl. And I'm like, why? Because I've been watching them and reading their things and seeing their names for years. And they're, they can pull these facts out of their head of ancient classical literature and Oxfordian and Elizabethan England. And I'm like, well, I'm just like this guy who does videos and goes, Stratfordians are dumb.
But Ben saw something in you.
And I guess various people based on my videos have were suggesting me to him. So what I am good at, I think, is remembering what it's like to be somebody on the fence. Mm-hmm. Going back to the 90s when I was reading the article, and I'm really good at. So I guess I think of myself more instead of the research arm of skepticism, more on the public relations side, because I'm really good at presenting things in a straightforward, accessible way. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm the everyman of this, which is sort of.
We saw that in the first episode. I mean, that was very clear.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, Roger Strittmatter gave me a compliment years ago that meant a lot to me. Probably doesn't remember it at all, but based on looking at things in various forums where I put it, he said the way that I present information makes it really hard for Stratfordians to argue with.
That's
I think that's what I guess that's what happens when you stick to basic and arguable facts. Mm-hmm. So taking it really down to basics and presenting things in a clear, accessible way.
I mean, given the firepower on the other side of the bar, I mean, Bonner is a second generation Oxfordian. Her parents were very influential in the movement earlier on. Earl Showerman has kind of taken the area of Greek influences from the plays on Shakespeare and worked them. Hank Whittemore has written a couple of books, one with the brilliant title, 100 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
And who am I missing?
Rick Wagaman.
Rick Wagaman. And Rick is a physician, one of the most indefatigable researchers I've ever encountered, and has a good sense of humor. So that's some heavy firepower from the other side of the board. How do you prepare for that? Do you have a set of questions you want to make sure that get answered, or that each of them has a chance to answer? I mean, what's the dynamic there?
I think it's a fine line between, it's not completely unstructured in the sense I think Ben comes up with a question, a basic one.
Uh-huh.
And so it's, I guess part of my role is to have a little more guidance in the sense of nudging things here and there. So to keep it to the thing, but we also want to keep it spontaneous.
Right.
So it really is like you're sitting there hearing a spontaneous conversation. So, I'm fine if it goes off on interesting tangents.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting is more important than sticking to.
I think it's a great idea. To the best of my knowledge, this was Ben's idea from the get-go, and he has really nurtured it. It's really terrific. And it's for members only. So if you are new, join. And if you haven't renewed, this is a unique opportunity. How am I doing on the commercial here? To join and make sure you can see it. Do you have any sense of what areas you're going to be looking at, both in this upcoming episode and in any of the other monthly episodes that are planned?
No.
Okay.
But I think roughly it's going to be sort of easing into it, like the first time we talked about what does it matter who wrote them.
Right.
So a basic question. So I know a number of people have thought it would be good for us all to kind of introduce ourselves in a way. So I think it's roughly going to go to how did we get into it, like the stuff you just asked me. Like maybe next time focusing on each person instead of like going around it for your 10 minutes. How did you get into it? How did you get it? Like maybe I'll just make this up. Earl gets a bit of the spotlight the next time, and we keep going around to how he got into it and his specialties. So those can be some of the tangents.
Right.
And then maybe the next time somebody else, and then gradually maybe building out from there.
Okay. I should notice that last year you won the video contest, in which you, I think, played virtually all the parts, not the female part, but virtually all the male parts, including that of the grand questioner, on what does it really matter. And I thought it was very, very effective. It's on the website, so if folks want to see it, they can. But I thought you did a terrific job on that, and justifiably took the pennant. Okay. Anyways, I mean, in looking at your resume, I don't think I see a hell of a lot of Shakespeare, if at all. But that may be as much coincidence as anything else. Are there any plans for Shakespearean or Oxfordian events coming up with you?
Well, I think the Blue Boar is by allotment of, I always wish I could split myself into 8 or 9 people who could each do one thing only, and one of them would be devoted to authorship thing.
Yeah.
But I can't. So I have to sort of put my energy where it can. So like the videos, that's been sort of a way of keeping my toes in, and it's, led to this. So this is sort of it now.
Cool.
I think related to the videos I've entered the last few years, because I guess in the past 2 years, it got second place and then the first. And I've had so much fun doing them because my approach, again, was sort of as a public relations thing. A lot of them I found were really well done and creative and technically well done, but in a way preaching to the choir in a way that Oxfordians can watch and nod or smile knowingly. But I was aiming them more for the people like me 30 years ago. And actually, my approach was really influenced. You remember a TV show in the 80s, James Burke did one called Connections, and he did one called The Day the Universe Changed. They were on PBS.
I don't.
Okay. But they were great because here was this guy and he would travel around the world and be in front of these ancient things talking about history and science and being very accessible and personable, like he's talking to you only.
Mm-hmm.
and making these connections like from, well, here I am in among these ancient Roman ruins, and here's how ancient Roman technology influenced the construction of the space shuttle. And then he would very clearly draw out this line.
Very cool. Very cool.
The in between key part is if you put two horses right over a railroad track, the ties line up with their rear ends. That's, but he would trace these
something I never knew, and I don't know what I'll do with it, but it's important to know.
There's a lot of in-betweens there. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have somebody that accessible doing things like that related to the authorship, somebody not lecturing or being pedantic in any way, but talking about the adventure of learning this stuff.
You know,
you've really
put your finger on something. I've always wondered why so many of the Oxfordian books are so thick and so long. One of the reasons it finally dawned on me was that if you're going to tell the story of the actual author of the plays and the poems, you have to set a new history. You have to talk about the Elizabethan world in a way that no one has really talked about before, because everything has been focused on this uneducated guy, let's call it what it is, from a small town in a socially striated country where you didn't have the right connections and bloodlines. You were nothing and you were at risk. And suddenly he has knowledge that nobody else has. And maybe he got it at a place just like yours, the Blue Boar Tavern, which is what Stratfordians will tell you, except where would he have gotten the money? You know, he was doing loans and selling grain, hoarding grain during
selling stone, yeah.
So, you know, the approach you're taking, I think, is terrific because you're basically talking to the man from Mars who's interested, but doesn't know much about this subject and really doesn't want to get weighted down with footnotes. And you are making it accessible.
That's what I try to do. Like, I'll throw it out here. Other people can use this if you want. The way I've to friends and people who say, well, why are you into this? Or what's the basic thing? Because they want sound bites. And, you know, it doesn't work with sound bites because Stratfordians tear apart sound bites individually. Right. But the best I've come with a sound bite to justify the authorship issue is if all the works had been published by author X at the time, no name on them, you know, the author X's first folio, author X's sonnets, or Venus and Adonis by author X, and you put forward the life records of the Stratfordian as a candidate for author X, you wouldn't make the first round. You'd be laughed out of the building.
Right.
That's where the authorship question comes from.
Right. We are going to turn in so we can watch you in action, joining the true list of great bartenders in this country and abroad. Thanks a lot for talking. I really appreciate it. I've learned a great deal and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.